The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We've worked to broker a deal that would bring hostages home, that would stop the fighting.
But now a potential hiccup could throw it off course. Might the historic ceasefire agreement that was rejoiced just a day ago be on the verge of falling apart? And the days of TikTok ticking down. SCOTUS is yet to rule against the ban that would force a shutdown in just 3 days. The new report that suggests either Biden or Trump will step in. Plus, below freezing temperatures barreling down on nearly half the country. Who's layering up and who's been spared by Mother Nature's frigid force? Tonight, ceasefire deal dilemma, a day after being hailed a historic achievement. Signs of possible jeopardy. Netanyahu's cabinet was scheduled to vote on the proposal that Hamas recently accepted, but delayed the vote, citing some last-minute revisions. This as war ticks up on the ground. Dozens of Palestinians killed earlier today, marking the highest daily death toll in over a week. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the very latest.
The deal everyone had been waiting for
We are so happy.
appears to be back on track after a temporary roadblock. Israel's parliament, the Knesset, delaying a vote to certify the long-awaited peace agreement that would end the war in Gaza and bring the remaining hostages home.
The Israelis know they're making a deal with the devil in Hamas.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a last-minute crisis with Hamas is holding up the deal's finalization. Secretary of State Antony Blinken telling reporters Thursday he's confident the deal will still move forward.
I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday. Look, it's not exactly surprising that in a process and a negotiation that has been this challenging and this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak.
This comes as Netanyahu faces growing internal pressure to limit concessions. Some of his top officials have come out publicly against the deal. The Associated Press reporting Hamas tried to make last-minute revisions relating to how far Israeli forces would withdraw from parts of Gaza. The issue is expected to be quickly resolved. Welcome news to many in the war-weary region, like Nova Music Festival survivor Daniel Sharabi, who learned his best friend Yosef is on the list of hostages expected to still be alive.
When I saw him on the list, it's mean everything, because if they keep him till now, they're going to keep him till the end. And this is everything that I can wish for. It's the only thing that I care about. That's it. Bring them home now.
As the last-minute issues of this deal are resolved in Doha, Israel's Knesset announcing they'll vote on the ceasefire deal this Friday, a day later than initially scheduled. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Tonight, UN officials concerned the deal could fall apart are pushing warring sides to follow through.
It's important to the hostages, their families. It's equally important to all the civilians that have suffered endlessly and needlessly. Now is the time.
UN aid group UNICEF says it is prepared to scale its response efforts as soon as aid is cleared to enter Gaza. Part of the first phase of that ceasefire deal calls for Israel to allow a surge of medical and food supplies into the enclave, where shortages have contributed to a humanitarian crisis. Tonight, 5,000 firefighters remain on the job battling the largest wildfire in LA's history. With winds calming, new tools have been at their disposal, which officials say provides hope that more of the blaze will soon be contained. This as recovery gets underway in the Palisades area, where the blaze is still just 22% controlled. Hundreds of utility workers are clearing debris and making sure dangerous power lines are secure.
They have been on the ground going house to house, making sure those things are off and clearing the area so that we can begin the process of getting folks back in to at least see what, if anything, may be left of their home.
More than 12,000 structures have been destroyed while thousands of people remain evacuated. That includes people like Joni Miller, who's already lost her home and perhaps more painfully, her most prized possessions.
I lost a lot of family heirlooms that I feel like my family entrusted me to take care of and pass on. And I feel like I've let my family down. They're all sentimental things, but they're things that I can't replace.
Help and relief efforts are underway all across the country to assist people just like Joni and her family. Our parent company, Sinclair Incorporated, is partnering with the Salvation Army for Sinclair Cares California Wildfires Relief to provide essential meals, fresh water, and supplies to the hardest hit areas. Now, if you want to know more information about how you can help, just scan the QR code right there on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. New tonight, plot twists in the TikTok saga. With a ban expected to take effect on Sunday, both President Biden and President-elect Trump are signaling that they each want to be credited with saving the popular platform. The National News Desk's Atra El-Nashar reports.
TikTok may have less than 72 hours left to function in the United States.
Essentially, the platform shuts down.
The Supreme Court is expected to uphold a bipartisan national security law passed last spring that gave TikTok until January 19th to be sold from its Chinese parent company ByteDance or face a U.S. ban.
You can't take away TikTok!
When President Biden signed the Protecting Americans' Data from Foreign Adversaries Act into law, he knew it gave him the authority to extend the January 19th deadline if there was a sale in progress. But there isn't one. Neither TikTok nor ByteDance want a divestiture. NBC reports the White House is trying to think of a way to keep the app available, aware of how a ban might taint Biden's last full day in office. How they'll do it is unclear. They're reportedly ruling out delaying enforcement. Then there's the incoming president. The Washington Post reports Trump has expressed a keen interest in being seen as rescuing a platform in which he's been told he's widely admired. Easier said than done.
This isn't just a matter of him waving a magic wand with an executive order to try to postpone it. If that's how it worked, you would not have any stability within our democratic system.
Under the law, authority to grant TikTok an extension belongs to whoever is president before the January 19th deadline, not after.
Trump may tell his Department of Justice to not enforce the law. However, any member of Congress, let's say, who supports the law can go to court and sue to enforce it. Regardless of what Trump or Biden may do in the coming days, Google and Apple may play it safe and remove TikTok from their app stores as the statute requires.
I think that these publicly traded companies are not going to take that risk.
Meanwhile, TikTok CEO Shou Chew working to win over the incoming administration, expected to attend inauguration. Like other tech moguls, hoping it produces political capital. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Atra, thank you. Attorney General Merrick Garland is being pressured to drop all federal charges against Donald Trump's former co-defendants in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. But ironically, the request is coming from House Democrats. Ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, wants the charges against Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira to go away so that the DOJ can release the rest of the special counsel's report on Donald Trump before Monday at noon. On Tuesday, Garland released part of the report, but said the rest could only be revealed after the other criminal cases are finished.
I have to emphasize, we're very worried that this person may harm himself or others if he continues to experiment with thermite.
The FBI is still looking for the person who set 3 ballot boxes on fire in Vancouver and Portland in October. Officials believe the suspect used thermite devices. They're asking anyone in the Pacific Northwest who had an unusual interaction with someone or saw unusual activity to come forward, and they're offering up to a $25,000 reward. Beginning on May 7th, any American who wants to fly domestically or enter any federal building nationwide is going to need a real ID. It's a compliant form of identification, but that plan is receiving growing backlash around the country. The Real ID Act was signed into law in 2005, all in response to the 9/11 tragedy, and it's expected to fully go into effect this year. But in Maine, a growing number of bipartisan lawmakers want to see the act repealed completely.
Real ID gives us this false sense of security that this card is somehow going to protect us from terrorism. The fact is, it's an expensive form of identification. It's almost twice as much as a regular driver's license, and it actually infringes on our privacy.
Libby says the personal information entered into a central database could put people's security at risk. She also says that 75% of Mainers have yet to get a real ID, which indicates they don't want it. But the Maine Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, she warns that if enacted, pushing back could just have drastic consequences, keeping Mainers from being able to fly around the country. A Southwest Airlines pilot, David Alsop, facing DUI charges after showing up to work while intoxicated. He was scheduled to fly from Savannah, Georgia to Chicago yesterday morning when Southwest personnel noticed his impairment and removed him from duty. This did cause a minor delay for the passengers on that flight, but Southwest said they were able to accommodate them on other flights. Alsop has been released from jail on a $3,500 bond. Actor and director of It Ends With Us, Justin Baldoni, is suing his co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds for defamation and extortion. It comes after Lively sued Baldoni and other defendants connected to the movie, accusing Baldoni of sexual harassment. Baldoni is seeking at least $400 million in damages. And one of the biggest personalities baseball has ever known has died. Bob Uecker, voice of the Milwaukee Brewers, was 90 years old. The Hall of Fame broadcaster was a frequent late-night guest on the Johnny Carson show, where he was dubbed and then forever known as Mr. Baseball. Uecker was known for his colorful comedy as well as his knowledge of the broadcast booth. He also had a very successful career in the movies and TV. His family says he battled small cell lung cancer since 2023. Coming up, what to expect as an Arctic blast enters the country, bringing negative temperatures to tens of millions of Americans. Then the action that could help protect firefighters from exposure to toxic materials in the uniforms they have to wear to work. And later, how a notorious area of Seattle was transformed after a drug trafficking ring was busted. We'll be right back. Cold weather continues across the country tonight, with nearly half of the country expecting minimum temperatures at or below freezing, and it's only going to get colder as we approach the weekend. Tomorrow night into Saturday morning, 10 states will see lows of single digits, if not below zero. And then next week, that Arctic blast will cover more than half of the country, who will experience a major drop in temperatures. By early next week, at least 39 states could see lows in the single digits. Temperatures predicted to fall below zero for roughly 81 million people. The temperatures in most states will be about 35 degrees below average for this time of year. Several states in the South, including Texas, could also see snowstorms by the middle of next week. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is appointing his state's Attorney General Ashley Moody to fill the Senate seat vacated by Marco Rubio, who's been nominated for Secretary of State. Moody is a close ally of DeSantis, who praises her as a law and order prosecutor. She's been the state AG since 2019 when she replaced Pam Bondi, who is now up for the United States Attorney General. In the House today, 61 Democrats joined all voting Republicans to make domestic violence by a non-legal resident of the United States a deportable offense. 145 Democrats voted against the bill. The measure now heads to the Senate for final passage. Taking a look at your money, mortgage rates are now above 7%. That's according to Freddie Mac. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate increased for the fifth straight week to 7.04%. But it's still not up to the 20-year high seen in October of 2023 of 7.8%. Americans' retail spending, that increased last month, giving the Federal Reserve even more reason to stay cautious about cutting interest rates this year. Retail sales went up 0.4%, and that's not adjusted for inflation. Some of the biggest categories were furniture, sporting goods, books, and gift shop purchases. Schools across the country are still dealing with staffing shortages made worse by the pandemic, but compensation is not the primary concern for many teachers. According to study.com, 43% of teachers would consider staying in their jobs if they had better work-life balance. Nearly half said more classroom support through paraprofessionals or aides would help them and their students.
You think about the difference between one adult with, let's say, 25 or 30 students, and the difference that a second adult in the classroom can make, even if it's not an educator. We just hear overwhelmingly from our teaching community nationwide that this is something that is really needed to be able to provide quality one-on-one teaching to students.
And hiring extra people could help offset the cost of losing teachers to burnout. Fewer people are dying from cancer now than a few decades ago. That's good news. A new American Cancer Society report shows cancer deaths declined 34% from 1991 to 2022. Experts credit earlier detection and better treatments. But death rates, those are increasing for specific types of cancer, like oral, pancreatic, and liver cancers. And more women and young adults are getting cancer, and that could be due to obesity rates or genetic and environmental factors. For more than a year, Spotlight on America has been investigating a very serious threat to firefighters embedded in the gear they put on when they do their life-saving work. Now, as Lisa Fletcher reports, change may be coming, but experts say there's a lot more to do.
Every day you're going into work knowing the Grim Reaper is looking over your shoulder every single time you put on your turnout pants and your turnout coat. They're poisoning themselves, and they're getting that much closer to a cancer diagnosis.
With cancer the #1 killer of firefighters, 2 Virginia firefighters teamed up to understand why.
Cancer rates are through the roof, and people are walking around with chronic illnesses because our bodies are so overly exposed with all these chemicals and toxins.
Brian Goodman and Charlene Beach's investigation led them somewhere they'd never imagined. Back inside the fire station, to the very lockers where they gear up. Embedded in their protective suits are PFAS chemicals, tied to everything from cancer and infertility to autoimmune disease. The discovery is a direct result of this testing done on the pair's gear, led by Dr. Graham Peasley, Notre Dame physicist and chemist, renowned for his work exposing PFAS in items we all rely on in everyday life.
It was there for many years, for decades, before people noticed or challenged the notion that it should be there. And not only that it was in the gear, but it came off. We could see it literally rubbing off the gear as we touched it. And that was concerning to us.
Later research showed that wear and tear and heat on the gear can actually cause more PFAS to release. And for every 5-degree increase in body temperature, skin absorption goes up 400%.
So we are basically opening up the highway lanes for these chemicals to come into our body and disrupt ourselves.
Given the mounting evidence in the 6 years since Peasley's initial discovery, it begs the question why gear continued to be made with PFAS. Some blame this, a years-old book of standards from the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, accused of effectively requiring the use of PFAS in gear for nearly 2 decades.
We've buried thousands and thousands of our brothers and sisters from job-related cancer. And to the extent that this standard influenced that, our family members deserve answers.
Answers that Ed Kelly, general president of the International Association of Firefighters, is fighting for in a lawsuit against the NFPA on behalf of 300,000 men and women they represent. In the midst of the legal battle, some movement. The NFPA published a new standard that opens the door to options for safer materials, which is now in effect. Ed Kelly calls it a win, but he's not giving up the lawsuit, saying allegations of industry alliances and lack of transparency that blocked change for so long must be exposed.
Was the NFPA the only thing holding back the safety of the gear?
When it comes to PFAS, it was the NFPA standard that was holding it back.
The NFPA calls the lawsuit meritless and says it takes very seriously concerns around the many toxic and hazardous substances firefighters are exposed to. Kelly says in addition to the lawsuit, federal action is needed to ensure that PFAS-free gear reaches every firefighter as quickly as possible.
You've called this a zero-fail mission. What do you mean by that?
We can't fail. We have to be constantly vigilant to ensure that the gear we're putting on isn't making us sick.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Ed Kelly and other leaders are pushing for federal legislation that would universally ban PFAS in turnout gear. There have been bills introduced in Congress, but nothing so far has advanced. The world of entertainment lost one of its most celebrated directors. David Lynch of Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks fame has died. In a Facebook post, Lynch's family announced his passing without giving a cause. He was diagnosed with emphysema in 2020, and he would have been 79 on Monday. Coming up, the top concern of a Florida immigration lawyer as the state prepares to ramp up deportations. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start with new immigration policy plans in Florida.
Governor Ron DeSantis wants Florida to lead the nation when it comes to enforcing Trump's mass deportation plans. He laid out his wish list of policies he wants to see enacted. That includes local police power to detain and deport, as well as make it harder for immigrants to send money to their families back home. Immigration lawyers working long hours right now.
Now, our main concern as practitioners is the human rights violations. The people who are here with no criminal history, they're just trying to get asylum or seek a better life, a better future. Our concern is that those individuals are going to be caught in this web.
By all accounts, it was a gruesome scene. The death of a 75-year-old woman, Rebecca Westergaard, found on Christmas Day on her front porch with at least one of the neighbor's pigs nearby. Wednesday, I went to the Licking County Coroner's office. That's where the deputy coroner told me the pigs knocked the woman down and mauled her, leading to her death.
She has injuries to her lower legs,
She was alive, up and walking around, and then the pigs injured her, and she died from loss of blood due to the injuries made by the pigs.
It's an area that's been called the jungle for years, and while it's been cleared and locked down now, this was the center of a fight over control of the drug trade in Seattle's Chinatown International District.
This territory is prime real estate for drug traffickers. They have been turf route battles for this control of this area.
Federal prosecutors say these men were among the group who trafficked much of the fentanyl and meth that was flowing through the jungle and still affects the notorious corner of 12th and Jackson.
This community has been under siege, and we are here today to say that we will not tolerate the widespread and staggering criminal conduct that is happening in this beautiful community.
Coming up, the big achievement Jeff Bezos' space company just completed that could help astronauts reach the moon. A monumental achievement for Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin space company.
Lift off. All 7 engines at full thrust. Chamber pressures are good. Vehicles cleared the tower. Now passing 18 seconds.
Designed to host satellites or direct them to their proper orbits, New Glenn is built to haul spacecraft and eventually astronauts to orbit and to the moon. And one of the 2 astronauts stuck in space got a break from the confines of the International Space Station today. Sunny Williams did her first spacewalk since getting to the station last summer, and she's set to do another one next week with Butch Wilmore. The 2 were supposed to spend a week in space last summer, but now they won't return until at least March. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Have a great night.